Hello, kindergartners. Welcome to Social Studies today. Today we are going to start a new unit on financial literacy. So today we are going to learn about borrowing. We're going to learn about borrowing and the responsibilities involved in borrowing things from other people. So we're going to talk about how we can accomplish more together than by ourselves. And that one way to do that is by borrowing and sharing. Our checklist for today, we are going to review the objectives, watch the lesson video, complete the assignment, and then click Mark as done on Google Classroom. Our objectives for today, we are going to cover your content objective. I can identify one benefit of borrowing. Our language objective, I can explain the responsibilities of borrowing. The materials you will need today is a piece of paper and something to draw with. All right, like I said, we are going to start talking about borrowing. So we have two vocabulary words today. Our first word is borrowing. Everybody say borrowing. Borrowing is when something is given to a person to be used for a while, but it must be returned. So maybe when you are at home and you're playing with your brothers and sisters, you might borrow a toy, but then you have to give it back. And we're also going to talk about buying. Buying is using money to get something. So I want you to think about, where do we get books? We can get books at the library, the store, garage sales, or maybe as presents from teachers or grown-ups or friends. So I want you to think, this is a picture of a library. And what do you think is the difference between a library and a bookstore? I'll give you a hint. At one of the places, we borrow books, and at another place, we buy books. In a library, we check out books, and then we have to return them back to the library. So that is us borrowing the books. But at a bookstore, you use money to buy the book. Then you get to keep that book because it is yours, because you paid money to buy it. How do you think the library gets books? People give books or they donate books to the library. People can give or donate money that is used to buy books, so then we can check the books out, read them for a while, and then return them back to school. Now, when you borrow books, how do we treat them? So when you're turning the pages, are you going to be gentle or rough on the book? You're going to probably turn the pages really slowly to make sure that they don't get ripped or broken. Because if it's not yours, we have to be very careful with it. So we want to keep them clean, keep them dry. We don't want to spill anything on them. And then we have to return them back to the library when they're due. Now, what do you think happens if we have an accident and damage the books that we borrow? What do you think happens then? We have to replace them. So we have to pay money for the library to buy a new book to replace the one that we have broken or ruined. Now, I want you to think about, I'm going to go back to this actually. What's an advantage to everyone when we can borrow books? When we have access to many books, we don't have to buy them all, right? Because we can just borrow the books for a little while from the library and then we return them. That means we don't have to buy all the books because we can just read them for a little bit and give them back. Can you think of anything else that maybe your family might borrow instead of buy? Maybe if you have a grown-up who is working on a project in the backyard and they need a shovel, but they don't have a shovel. They could go ask the neighbor to borrow their shovel. Then that means they have to use it and return it. That way they don't have to go to the store and buy it. All right, we are going to listen to a story. And this is a story about borrowing. It's called Sammy's Bright Ideas. And we're going to think about some other things that we could borrow.
In a small coastal village in Sri Lanka, there was a boy named Sammy. Sammy lived in a house by the sea because his father was a fisherman. Early in the morning, before the sun peeked out of the clouds, Sammy's father would set off on his sampan to go fishing. In the late morning, Sammy would climb up the coconut tree to look out for his father's sampan coming back with the day's catch. One day, when Sammy was climbing down the tree to welcome his father back, he noticed the worried look on his father's face. "What's wrong, Papa?" he asked. "We only caught enough fish to feed ourselves, not enough to sell in the market," Sammy's father replied. This made Sammy very worried too, because it meant that they would not be getting money from the fish to buy other food items for the family. Sammy walked along the shore. After thinking long and hard, he finally exclaimed, "Aha! I will go to each house in this village and ask them if I could borrow 1 cup of rice. That's not a lot to ask for." So off he went with a sack in his hand. When he got to the first neighbor's house, he asked the neighbor, "Please, may I borrow 1 cup of rice? My father did not catch enough fish to sell at the market, so we could not buy any rice today." The neighbor replied, "I will lend you 1 cup of rice if you give me back 2 cups of rice in return." Sammy thought it was a fair deal, so off he went with his 1 cup of rice. At the second neighbor's house, Sammy asked for 2 sweet potatoes. "I will give you the sweet potatoes, but I want 1 fish in return," said the neighbor. "My father is a fisherman. I could do that," said Sammy. So off he went with his 1 cup of rice and 2 sweet potatoes. Sammy continued to spend the rest of the day borrowing food from his neighbors until his sack could fit no more. The sun was setting, and Sammy's parents were getting worried. Just as they were about to go out to look for him, Sammy barged in and said, "Papa, Mama, I gathered all this food. We don't have to worry if Papa doesn't catch any fish tomorrow. This food will last us forever." Immediately, the faces of his father and mother went dim. "Sammy, where did you get all this food from?" Sammy's father asked him. "The neighbors, they all said that I could have this food as long as I gave them something in return," Sammy replied. "Sammy, what did you promise our neighbors?" Sammy's mother asked him. "For 1 cup of rice, we just need to return 2 cups of rice when we have it. That's easy because we usually have a sack full," Sammy replied. "Yes, Sammy, it's easy to return 2 cups of rice to 1 person, but when you have borrowed from so many people, it will add up to a mountainful," said his father. "And the sweet potatoes?" Sammy's mother asked. "No problem. I told everyone that I would give them one fish in return for 2 sweet potatoes, said Sammy. Sammy, that's even worse. The value of one fish is so much more than 2 sweet potatoes. We could buy an entire sack of rice with one fish, but sweet potatoes are worthless, said his father. Then we should sell all our fish and buy many sacks of rice, exclaimed Sammy. Sammy's mother and father looked at each other, unsure whether to laugh or get mad. They sat him down and explained to him that it was a bad habit to take things from other people. It's not good to borrow from so many people at one time. Even though it may seem like a small amount that you take from one person, it adds up to become a huge amount before you realize it, Sammy's mother said. Immediately after, Sammy's parents took the big sack of food and went around the village with Sammy to apologize and return all the food that Sammy had taken. When they reached the last person's house, the neighbor said, "You have already borrowed and agreed to give me 2 cups of rice in return. I will not accept this." Sammy, his mother, and his father looked at each other worriedly. Sammy was about to open his mouth to explain, but before he could say anything, the neighbor interrupted. "I was just joking, young man. Why don't you come on in for some sweet potato curry?" Sammy looked at his parents for approval, who nodded at him. He hopped happily into the neighbor's house and exclaimed, "Okay, I promise to give you many sweet potatoes in return."
All right. Now we're going to do a different activity. So I want you to look at this slide and you're going to see some cups. And we're going to do this together. And then you can do this on your own after this. Okay. So there are some cups. And now we're going to stack these cups. And here's how you stack the cups. Let me show you. We're going to put some down here. And if you have cups at your house that you would like to practice stacking the cups with instead of doing it on the computer, you can go grab some cups and go for it. We're going to stack them like this. We're going to make a little tower. Let me fix that one. All right, look at my tower. What do you notice about it? I see, the first thing that I notice is that they're all blue cups. These are all my cups. And I made a pretty good sized tower, but now look at this slide. I see 2 colors of cups. So the blue cups are still mine, and the green cups are my friend's cups. Now we're gonna work together to build our tower. So I might grab one of these. Blue, green, blue, green, blue, green. Now I'm gonna make my second layer of cups. Now, while I'm making this tower, I want you to notice maybe some things that are the same as the other tower, something that's different than the other tower. Oh, we're getting too big. Okay, my tower is done. What do you notice? The first thing that I notice is there are blue and green cups. So remember, the blue cups are mine and the green cups are my friend's cups. Which tower is bigger? Just the blue tower or the blue and green tower? So on this slide, let's go back to this one. On this slide, I had my own cups. And on this slide, I borrowed the green cups. So remember what borrow means. I have to give them back, but I'm going to use them right now. Which tower is bigger? You're right, the blue and green tower is bigger. So when we combine materials and we borrow, we can do more together than just by ourselves. So remember, we talked about books and how to be responsible with borrowing books. Do you remember one of the ways? We have to make sure that we give them back. We have to make sure that we take care of them. What's a benefit of borrowing? Remember, we can accomplish more together than just by ourselves. So here's your assignment for today. You are going to think about one of these two questions. You can either draw a picture of one of the benefits of borrowing things, or you can draw a picture of a responsibility when you borrow things. So we talked about some benefits, like you can accomplish more together than just by yourself. A responsibility of borrowing, think back to our books. When you check out a book from the library, how do you want to return it? Like this picture or like this one? So you're going to choose one of these questions and draw a picture. So either draw a picture of a benefit of borrowing, something that's good about borrowing, or a responsibility of borrowing. When you're done, take a picture and put it on the next slide, and then go back to Google Classroom and click Mark as done.